There's been a weird trend with HBO shows for the past maybe 5 years. I think it really started with Westworld. I think some people would argue that it started with the end of The Sopranos, but for me, it was around episode 3 of Westworld, 4, when I realized that the show's premise had been used to sell the show, but ultimately anything beyond that premise maybe hadn't been thought out to the degree that one would want it to be thought out. Now, you have to keep in mind, I'm not dunking on the writers involved. I'm talking about finished products here. I'm talking about shows on TV. And when you watch Westworld, a show based on a book about a really, really cool advanced AI Wild West theme park, you want to watch a show about that. Seeing that whole premise get blown up by the end of the first season is what caused people to kind of turn on Westworld, because suddenly they were trying to do all these things and created all these plot holes and misdirects, when really what Westworld was at the end of the day was robots versus humans. Robots versus humans. They did all this philosophical stuff, but it was robots versus humans. There were no real personal stories. It was about the end of the world. It's robots versus humans. Here's the fucking problem for me about that. I want to see personal stories told in a Wild West robot theme park. Them revolting can be a subplot for like 4 seasons. If Westworld was still about that, I'd still be watching it now. Now we come to the more recent trend, the streaming era of HBO, where HBO is going to retake the title it originally took in the 90s as the premier purveyor of, quality content. This is movies on TV, big actors, big stories, really dark, gritty, edgy, thrilling content. So they made a show about a rich guy who murders a girl he's sleeping with. But you can't sell. It's a show about a rich couple in New York, and the guy has an affair and murders a girl with a hammer. You can't sell that. Now, this sounds like spoilers for a show. Like, it sounds like what I'm telling you is in the last episode. No, what I'm telling you is in the first episode. A rich guy appears to murder a woman with a hammer. Spoilers from everything in The Undoing. I'm really going to get into it now from this point on. There will also be spoilers for Watchmen, spoilers for HBO's Run, and there was one more HBO show that really, really farted out on the end, and I don't remember what it is, but it's been like a heavy trend lately of what I think are reverse-built ideas. Watchmen. HBO's Watchmen is a great example of this. HBO's Watchmen has fascinating things to say about the police state, about power. It's a brilliant sequel to Alan Moore's 1985 epic Watchmen. It's a direct sequel to the comic. It doesn't even borrow from the Zack Snyder movie. It gives you everything you would want from a Watchmen TV show. And then in the final episode of the Watchmen TV show, it gives you everything you wouldn't want in a Watchmen TV show. Dr. Manhattan is not all powerful. The villain doesn't make sense. Ozymandias is reduced from one of the most complicated characters in American fiction, and I'm not even being hyperbolic. In Watchmen, if you haven't read it, is like a classic piece of literature. And Ozymandias is like a brilliant character. Like, truly, I'm not putting on kid gloves to talk about a comic. I'd say Ozymandias is like up there with the best fictional characters of the 20th century, like top 100 at least. Him and, I can't even name Roger Rabbit. But it killed me because they simplified everything and like buttoned it at the end of Watchmen. So now I'm really going to talk about The Undoing and the danger of, how do I phrase this in a way that sounds smart? The problem is that the finale of this show about a guy who murdered the woman he's having an affair with a hammer, it just aired. And the spoiler at the end of it is that the guy murdered the woman he had an affair with a hammer. Okay, so in the last episode, they position him to be, in court, a malign narcissist. Now, I don't know how much you know about personality disorders. I know a lot. I've been up and down through the ringer reading about these things. I've been to a lot of different therapists. And I will say something. if you're going to write a narcissist character, they can't be one of the leads, because in the first 3 episodes of the show, when he's supposed to be like, I didn't do it, I didn't kill her, we're with him alone. This is a storytelling choice. If you're going to have a character who doesn't have empathy and doesn't feel remorse, don't give them scenes alone. Much less, don't give them scenes alone where they appear to be feeling empathy and remorse or even crying. Much less, don't, for God's sakes, if you're a director and you're giving a narcissist or a sociopath a scene alone and they're crying, don't include flashes of their son, the crime they may have committed, the people they're in love with. That is a cinematic depiction of guilt and remorse, inarguably. Except for in this show, it's done as a misdirect. And that's a small crime, because the real crime is in the editing. It's in the first 3 episodes. From fucking Big Little Lies to fucking whatever the hell else, TV for the last 10 years is all about unreliable narrators. Nicole Kidman in The Undoing is in Big Little Lies mode. She looks like a porcelain doll, but she's sort of shaking and scared and looks a little unstable. And that makes sense in Big Little Lies, because we find out she's keeping some very dangerous secrets about a realistically written narcissistic sociopath. In this fucking show, Nicole Kidman acts like a weird alien for 3 episodes and is like very stiff and is shown walking the streets alone at night, even though we're never explained why she's so fucking weird. Like, there's all these weird shots of her where like the edges are like blurred and she's like, and she keeps having flashbacks. Or are they fantasies? Are they flashbacks or fantasies? Because we keep abruptly being jump scared with that woman who got murdered with the hammer. We see a POV shot of a hand coming in and hitting a woman in the face with a hammer. She says, no, don't. Those are her last words. Nicole Kidman has this flashback 100 times in this show. Okay, like maybe, you know, maybe, just maybe, I'm not pontificating, I'm vlogging. I'm not here to answer questions. I'm yelling about The Undoing. I need to stop looking at the chat. I'll look at the chat at the end. Okay, so here's the thing. When we finally see the actual murder depicted on screen, a really bizarre choice is made, which is they use the footage we've been seeing from the flashback. We're essentially finally being shown the full version of the murder. And Hugh Grant did it. And that was his POV. So for 5 episodes, Nicole Kidman has been having Hugh Grant's flashbacks? What? You can't do that. That's not how a movie works. You can't, Jesus Christ, that doesn't make any sense. Is she psychic? Like, when that happened in the show, I thought, well, when they finally show the murder, that moment where the hammer hits the girl in the face, it can't be in there. Because if it's in there, that means Nicole Kidman did it. And if it's not in there, it's Nicole Kidman's fantasy. But it is in there, and Nicole Kidman didn't do it. Huh? What? What is this? On top of that, so much time is wasted in the show. That's the most interesting thing. They thought of a murder mystery, it seems, without actually thinking about how it would play out. As it's written right now, which is the weirdest thing, the character, this is something really weird because the show never says this out loud. As it's written, as it's done, this is so weird. As it's written, he's not a narcissist, and Nicole Kidman frames him for being a narcissist because she's protecting her son from getting caught for the hammer, right? That's how it's framed. That's how Nicole's betrayal of him is framed, is that, except for, here's the thing, he then begins to act like a cuckoo crazy maniac narcissist, and it turns out he's a big bad murderer. And it's like, but that doesn't make sense. And I'll go one step further on it not making sense. Even if, like, there's no question that Hugh Grant's a shitty guy in this thing. There's no question. The thing is, even in the case where he like murdered this girl, which he did because the show said he did, he murdered her in the heat of the moment after she was stalking him, after it wasn't a predatory affair. They became involved naturally via a very intense situation around her son. This girl had mental problems. Hugh Grant's a piece of shit. They had an affair. She went crazy. She started stalking him. She started stalking hhis wife. Hugh Grant tried to leave her. She tried to hit him with a hammer. He lost it in the moment, murdered her, fled like a lunatic, went home, then went to a motel. It's a second-degree murder. It's a crime of passion, as portrayed. But then the show tries to pretend like, no, actually, he's much worse than you think. As though evil actions can only be done by evil people. And that's my biggest problem with the show. Because at the end of the day, there are no interesting characters on the show. In hindsight, in the harsh light of the ending, Hugh Grant is a cardboard cutout of a crazy lying narcissist. Nicole Kidman is a victim wife who does very little proactive anything and is made to look like an idiot because she didn't see that her husband was a fucking monster of the type we see the first 3 episodes of her going over and over and over. She takes like weird walks at night and happened to be next to the murder scene. I'm sorry. There's this fucking terrible thing. There's a terrible thing in the car where he kidnaps his son. And it's a very well-directed scene. It's very tense. Hugh Grant kidnaps his son. They're driving. And here's the fucking thing. No, codependence doesn't make them blind. They say that in the show. They go, oh, well, she was blind to how he really was. Except she wasn't, because we, the audience, have seen how he really was. We've seen him feel remorse. We've seen him feel guilt. In fact, we saw the murder. And was that murder a cold, calculated first-degree murder? Again, no, it was a crime of passion. So the show gives you 2 versions of reality. The problem is these versions don't support each other. You could argue that is it's actually like a meta next level thing. Like you kept forgiving him because you were tricked and like Nicole Kidman was. But that's not what it is. You're tricked because the show lies to you. The show says this character is a narcissist, and then you witness him be emotionally triggered over guilt by lying to his son about an incident from 40 years ago where his sister died, so much so that he becomes extremely heightened and upset in public, takes Nicole Kidman aside, and gives her information that if he was a narcissist, he would hide. On top of that, he has proven to have depicted that situation honestly. I'm sorry, there's so many holes that by the time when you're writing a story, okay, especially a story with twists, the brilliance about great twist stories, great twist movies like The Sixth Sense and fucking Fight Club or all the classics, the movie has to support the twist. Everything you do has to be delicately built to ride that twist. You can't think about how the audience is thinking and reacting in the moment and do it like a live stream to try to get likes. Oh, I noticed that in this part, Hugh Grant seems suspicious. What's the least suspicious thing I could have him do? Now he's totally not suspicious. But guess what? By the time you reveal that he's a killer, it's not going to work. And people will notice that something feels wrong. People make excuses for it. They will. People always make excuses for art they love. And I loved most of The Undoing. But at the end of the day, fuck that. Okay, thank you. Let's see what's happening in the chat. Nothing interesting, just creepy people as usual. A lot of questions about Power Rangers. Shocker, Patrick, you're the best thing in my chats. If I'm being serious, you're the best thing in my chats. My day's great. My girlfriend's working from home today, so she's way down there. Yellow. We were talking about The Undoing.
It pissed us both off.
And it pissed us both off. I'm gonna get that guy out of here. I'm gonna put him in timeout. Drop the goblin rap. I can do part of it. We haven't finished it. I have one part I'll do for you. My girlfriend's going like this. My girlfriend's doing this, but I'll do one part of my golden goblin rap. My girlfriend looks like one part of my golden goblin rap is trapped in a bubble, good witch, vilified, Elphaba, I'm a bad bitch. Life's crazy, never know how it's gonna go. Build you up and then let you down, HBO.